What's up, good people? Today I'm talking with Justin Belleme about the tips, tricks, and secrets every social entrepreneur needs to know to shortcut their way to success. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how social entrepreneurs can use content marketing to get better results faster. And before I begin, let me just share a little bit more about Justin, SoCap, and JB Media Group. So SoCap, which is short for Social Capital Markets, is a network of investors, entrepreneurs, and social impact leaders who are dedicated to increasing the flow of capital towards social good. And JB Media Group, which is founded by Justin, is a digital marketing agency based in Asheville, North Carolina, that supports mission-driven companies, social enterprises, and nonprofits. And they believe that mission-driven businesses and nonprofits play a leading role in solving big problems and creating a better world, and they deserve the best digital marketing services to help them do that. And I agree. And they're also a certified B Corp corporation, which is a big deal. So welcome, Justin, and let's get into the questions. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. And just to put a little connection between that, we are the marketing agency for SoCap and have been for 5 years. So that's awesome. That was kind of our introduction to social impact in some ways. It was our first high profile client in the sector, and it has led to us doing work for a lot of other organizations, including B Lab, the organization that certifies B Corps, our current client, and a number of others.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, right on. So I'm talking to an expert right here with this topic. So I guess the first question I wanted to ask you is, since we're talking about social entrepreneurship, I think this is the right time for social entrepreneurship just in this country and just in the world. And so what is the first step social entrepreneurs need to take when it comes to promoting their social enterprise, right? And why is it really important to invest in content marketing if you're just starting out with, let's say you're running a social enterprise? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's a little bit of a challenging question because social entrepreneurship comes in so many different flavors and sizes and types and global markets and communities that they serve. So it doesn't the first step isn't necessarily the same for each type of enterprise. And it's especially true when you compare organizations that make a product for consumers versus offer a service to consumers versus business to business or systems level change organizations. Each one has a different place to play and a different marketing funnel, a different marketing objective. So I can't necessarily say that one size fits all, but sort of boil it all down to you first of all need to understand really well who it is you're trying to communicate with. Regardless of how you're going to market, if you're going to be going door to door or LinkedIn messaging people or calling on people or emailing them, who are you reaching out to? Who are you trying to reach? And can you clearly define them in a persona and in a way that you can say, okay, we're maybe one is very distinct persona. You may have 4 or 5 that you need to create separate messaging for, separate strategies for. But knowing who they are, knowing a lot of times we don't do a ton of persona work. We don't do a ton of branding work in our agency. We do more content development, but we do need to know who we're writing the content for. And it's actually, if you're a writer, it's actually a lot easier to write when you're actually trying to talk to someone instead of a crowd. When you can visualize the person and what they're interested in and where they live and what they do and why they want to learn about what you're doing, then you can tailor the message to one person, and then it'll resonate with that entire group or the majority of the group you're trying to reach. So that developing your brand persona first, your personas first, your target audience is another way to describe that, and then starting to understand what your unique language and voice is, and then the intersection, what do they want to learn? What words are they looking for? What communities are they joining online? What media do they read? Various things that you can be used to craft your message and also eventually craft your targeting.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because I've worked for a lot of nonprofits over the years, and maybe you could just explain a little bit more about how to target one particular audience, because I know some nonprofits are focused well, it's not just nonprofits, but all social enterprises, right? But specifically, I've found with nonprofits, they're focused on maybe several issues, like let's say immigration or gun violence and something else. And so there's different issues that they're focused on, but how do they focus on one particular issue to, again, this is about promoting the social enterprise. So how do you go about that?
Well, that's a good question too. So just thinking about some of the examples you gave, most nonprofits have to serve several different simultaneous audiences. Usually it's the people they're trying to reach and influence, whether that's to provide a impactful service or to educate or to provide whatever their mission is. And then there's often partnerships, community leaders they're communicating with on a different frequency. And then donors, which are sometimes, similar to that second audience, but they're usually distinct. And who's giving them the money, the grantors, individuals, institutions that are funding their work, if they're not entirely revenue driven, which most nonprofits are. If they were entirely revenue driven, they probably wouldn't be a nonprofit. So when it comes to communicating with the constituents, the community of impact is one of the words I like to use, who are trying to have an impact with, who are trying to work with or work for, that's another line you have to understand and really examine to make sure you're working in community with your audience versus trying to tell them or dictate to them what they should be doing or how to fix their problem. That's a whole nother concern. We call that cultural sensitivity. But when it comes to just getting messaging to them, there's a lot of different tactics you can use. And another, interesting challenge with social entrepreneurship is understanding the ethical considerations of different targeting tactics. So I'm kind of skirting around this question you've asked me in a bunch of different ways because takes so much thought and effort to come up with that right approach. But just for some examples, we use tools like Answer the Public and Google Keyword Planner and Keyword.io and Ahrefs, that's Ahrefs. Those 4 tools, we use those in conjunction in different ways to figure out what people are looking for, what searches people are making. And content marketing can be used to create great content to serve those questions, whether they're searching on Google or they just find you through an ad or they hear about you from a friend. When they come to your site, you want to answer the questions that they have. So understanding the difference in search between how many people search for one question and another question helps you pick the things to write about. And then you write as if you're speaking to the person you want to reach. Back to the persona piece. So this is the writing of the Q&A, the FAQs, and your content comes after you define who it is you're trying to talk to. And once you create the content, there's a variety of ways to reach those people through social targeting, through partnerships and partnership email marketing, through doing events, and lots of other ways.
No, I appreciate that perspective, and I think that's very key. And I don't know if everybody knows that, so I appreciate that. So
and some of those tools like Keyword.io, Answer the Public, and Google Keyword Planner are free tools. I love Answer the Public. I don't know if you've ever used it before.
I have.
It creates a mind map of similar words to what you search. So if you're trying to work on homelessness in Chicago, you search homelessness Chicago, it'll bring up a whole 50 or 100 or 150 different longer searches people made. And so you might say, like, what are the homelessness resources in Chicago? That might be one of the phrases that pops up. And that might be something you create an article about or a blog about or a resource or infographic to serve that audience.
That's key. That's key. I could actually, you know what? I'm going to ask this question as well, because one of the things, like I used to be a journalist, so I'm kind of biased towards writing, but or just storytelling in general. But I've kind of wondered this. Do you think that, and this goes for a social enterprise that's for-profit or nonprofit, right? Do you think that it's important for social enterprises in particular to do things like blogging or, those types of storytelling tactics? Because again, it kind of takes a certain skill to write or be a storyteller. And if you're trying to focus on, solving some problems, if you're a for-profit social enterprise, you're trying to make a profit as well. So do you think that storytelling is really important for social enterprise?
I think it's critical. It's critical for all businesses. Nearly all businesses have to do storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
It looks different for different businesses. And I think social enterprises have an advantage because by nature, what they're doing is going to elicit a positive emotional response from a lot of people, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically from the people who potentially could support them. If they're doing, if they are following through on and accurately portraying, like you say, ethically portraying what their work is, then most likely it's going to resonate with the people who they're trying to serve or work with, and their partners and their potential funders, whether that's donors or customers. So you for a lot of traditional businesses, they try to find an impact initiative to latch on to so they can have a positive angle to share.
Right.
Most social ventures, that is their business model. That is their mission statement. That is their core of what they're doing. They don't have to make it up. They don't have to come up with some sort of strategy. It's not a CSR strategy. It is the business model. It's the work model. That helps. But another way to put it, another perspective to put on it is, unless you want to have to tell your story in one-on-one, over the phone, over email, over and over and over again,
mm-hmm.
getting it really well documented online is a way to scale your ability to tell it more efficiently.
Nice.
So the better you can do that, so the more aspects of your customer or your audience's journey from not knowing about you to becoming a brand advocate or customer, the more you can do that online through what we call a customer journey on the website, or through a combination of media, so social to email, social to email, to reading your site,
yeah.
or Google search to reading your website to taking action. The more you can handle that with automated content, where they're reading something, learning more, taking a next step, learning more, taking a next step, doing it all online, the less you have to be available to handhold it. The more you can remove the human element, the more scalable you are. And then if you can find ways to drive people into that funnel, into that content experience, or a cost that works for your model, then you become scalable, because you can put more money into that effort to drive more people through to taking the action you want, whether that's signing up for something, buying something, or potentially funding your organization, whatever those end games are. You usually have to have a different sort of experiential path for each of those outcomes.
Yeah, that's key. Okay, so that's perfect. Right on. Okay, so let me ask you this. Yeah, that kind of got into the next question I was going to ask, because what I found is that, like you're saying, especially with social enterprises, the social cause is the business model, right? So, like sometimes what I found is there's a notion out there that if you're trying to get your social enterprise off the ground, like you have to focus more on, the fact that you have to get it off the ground first. And so the storytelling aspect or the digital marketing strategy sort of takes a back seat. So I was just wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit more about, if somebody gets sort of stuck on that step, how do they get unstuck?
Well, it depends, because people have a different innate ability to produce content. So if writing is a challenge for you, or if being on camera is a challenge for you, or being authentic on social media is a challenge for you, and you're a small organization or even a one-person organization, then that's going to be hard to, feel confident and to prioritize and to produce quality, useful, and effective content. So if you really struggle with those things, then it can be a hindrance to getting started. In terms of building like I said, the online experience in such a way that it converts people automatically without them having to speak and hear you talk or talk to you. So if that is your biggest challenge, then you may have to postpone it a little. You may have to do get something up that's functional and then wait a little while till you can grow to the scale of hiring someone who specializes in that, whether that's internally, externally, internships. There's different ways to approach actually executing on a lower budget. But if you're fortunate enough to feel comfortable in one medium, then you probably can make strides. So some people are really great on video, and they're phenomenal like in person or speaking to a camera. And if that's your strength, then you can do a lot of that. And it's easy to get that stuff transcribed into content, into written content. If you're great at writing, then you probably, the words will flow freely. If you have some strategy behind it, you might need a little bit of help with the strategy part. If you're not used to the thinking of it in the formats we're talking about it and the tools we're talking about, you might need some help coming up with a content plan, but then you should be able to produce the content written wise. And for a lot of organizations, just good written content is enough to get started. And then when you scale, start to afford video, which video is more expensive when you're not capable of doing it yourself. Right. But yeah, if you struggle with both and you also struggle on social media, then it is a little bit of a hurdle.
Mm-hmm. But I like the theme that I'm hearing is that storytelling and running a social enterprise and also having an online presence, they go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, unless your organization is purely an intermediary between things and you're basically the connector and that's what you do, and you're doing it as a human resource, then there are situations where you can have an impact without creating an online presence. Mm. But if you're trying to scale a movement or a company brand of some sort, then the online presence and storytelling is paramount.
Yeah, cool, right on. Okay, so I just had a few more quick questions. So especially since you've been doing this work for a while, and you do it at a high level, are there sort of any tricks that you figured out or discovered over the years that would really help social entrepreneurs just approach digital marketing just sort of as a necessity, like we're talking about, and not a luxury? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of distilling some ideas. One thing that comes to mind is to look at what's out there and mimic it, but try to improve upon it. So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. Go out and look at what kind of content is dominating the first page of search and what's on YouTube, and just try to put your own spin on it. And that will help. It'll give you a little bit of momentum, and it doesn't cost very much money strategically to just create a kind of a copycat approach. I don't recommend it as a long-term strategy, but it can certainly help you get out the gate. But on the other hand, doing one thing better than anyone else is part of differentiating yourself. So once you figure out what your niche is, produce content that is better than what's out there for that niche. That's a critical piece of success, because the algorithms prefer things that have been around longer, things that have more links, things that have more views and more eyeballs. So in order to gain momentum and catch up with those who've been there before you, you have to do it better than them. Just doing it as well as them for a long time, you'll stay a couple steps behind forever. So you have to break through by innovating a message or an idea forward. Yeah. So that's important. I think I had one other thought. Once you figured out some of the topics that you're trying to cover, search them in Google, look at what's up there for inspiration and ideas and to find gaps, and then also start searching the word and see what pops up as suggested searches or suggested questions. When Google in certain searches has people also asked in like little question box knowledge graph. It's called the knowledge graph. It's like they snippets of content on their website about subtopics. Yeah, that's an easy way to come up with ideas. It's even simpler than the tools I mentioned before.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, that goes into just there's a strategy behind it. It's not just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. It sounds like there are there's ways, like you said before, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but that you can improve on it. And I think that's just I think that's the benefit. That's one of the great benefits of social enterprises, is because, I mean, social enterprises are really, they really exist to improve on, what's happening in society. So I think the same thing can happen with the content or digital marketing strategy. That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.